That's her. That's Alyssa Sutherland. Fuck.
The 2023 Scary Movie Awards from Johnny Recaps Movies.
Howdy, folks, and welcome to my horror parlor. I know it looked kind of empty on your way in, but take my word, it's going to be jam-packed in here as soon... Looks like a few of our nominees have arrived early. That's Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland from Evil Dead Rise.
You should have thousands of fucking subscribers, mate.
Aw, that's so lovely.
Fuck fucking. YouTube is a bunch of fucking ding-dongs.
Did you just say ding-dongs?
Bloody ding-dongs. Fuck fucking fuck. Johnny.
Oh look, there's Lizzie Kaplan from Cobweb.
Why don't you have any subscribers? Look at all the work you do. We're sitting in a fucking theater and there's toilets and everything. If you had more subscribers, I would leave my 5'8" Hollywood husband.
Okay, Lizzie Kaplan.
I love your channel.
And we love your fucking channel. Fucking fuck.
Thanks very much, ladies. Anyways, we've got an awful lot to get through here tonight, so here's what's happening.
Johnny Recaps Movies.
I went through nearly 60 movies from 2023 for tonight's award. I have also done everything in my power to keep tonight's show spoiler-free. Also, some of tonight's movies premiered at the end of 2022 at festivals, but I'm counting them as 2023 movies because that is when you and I got to see them in the theaters. Oh, there won't be any shark movies tonight either because fook shark movies. Go watch Jaws.
Presenting our first award of the evening and all of the other awards too, Johnny from Johnny Recaps Movies.
It's only me here tonight, folks, but if I keep growing the channel at its current rate, I will be able to take on an assistant in 17 years and 4 months. Our first category for the night highlights emerging talent.
Best Debut Director. And the nominees are Insidious, The Red Door, director Patrick Wilson, Talk to Me, directors Danny and Michael Philippou, Birth Rebirth, director Laura Moss, Cobweb, directed by Samuel Bowden.
And the winner is the Philippou brothers. Talk to Me.
Every debut director in this category did a fantastic job at the helm of their respective movies. Except, of course, for Patrick Wilson, who did this for a paycheck and opted to hand us a photocopy of the first Insidious movie after he'd wiped his ass with it. Talk to Me is a surprise horror hit about a group of young folks who get high from being possessed by the dead. It's written and directed by brothers Danny and Michael Philippou, who started the Reka Reka YouTube channel back in 2013. Talk to Me is their debut feature-length film, and it'll be interesting to see if they follow it up with something decent or if this will end up being a one-hit wonder situation.
Moving right along, our next category follows on naturally from the previous.
Best Debut Writer. And the nominees are Kyle Edward Ball, Skinamarink, Reese Fake Waterfield, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, Laura Moss, Birth Rebirth, the Philippou brothers, Talk to Me.
And the winner is Laura Moss, Birth Rebirth.
Laura Moss is an independent filmmaker and screenwriter from New York. I wouldn't have called Kyle Edward Ball a writer in relation to Skinamarink, but he is listed as one. Reese Fake Waterfield can go and fuck himself for destroying Winnie the Pooh as a potentially massive horror icon. Talk to Me was a strong contender for this category, but for me, Birth Rebirth explores its themes of parental grief and the consequences of blaming God with a touch more depth, and I like that.
Next up, let's lighten things up for a minute, shall we? But only for a minute.
Best Horror Comedy. And the nominees are Totally Killer, directed by Nahnatchka Khan, Cocaine Bear, directed by Elizabeth Banks, Jessica, directed by Pete O's, and Renfield, directed by Chris McKay.
And the winner is Renfield.
I got a laugh out of every movie in this category, but Renfield's shift of focus from the vampire to the familiar felt fresh and novel. Also, its comedic and horror elements felt perfectly balanced. Throw in a handful of unexpectedly well-coordinated action sequences, and Renfield makes for a perfect little package of funny and frightening. Disclaimer, we at the Scary Movie Awards recommend you completely ignore Awkwafina for full enjoyment of the film.
Next up, let's bridge the gap between a set of nerds and another set of nerds.
Best Horror Sci-Fi.
And the nominees are Megan, directed by Gerard Johnstone; Infinity Pool, directed by Brandon Cronenberg; No One Will Save You, directed by Brian Duffield; and Birth Rebirth, directed by Laura Moss.
And the winner is Megan.
At the heart of Megan was a story, and somewhat surprisingly, it was a decent story. The movie managed to hit that elusive balance between serious and satirical, and the titular doll was remarkably well done. All these things together made Megan an unexpected surprise for me and a lot of other people. And as a side note, Adam Driver's 65 was, by my own personal taste, a shoo-in for the Best Horror Sci-Fi Award. Dinosaurs and spaceships? Are you kidding me? But it wasn't even nominated because it was terrible and I hated it.
And next up, folks, Sorry, I'm not sure who snuck this one in here. I certainly did. Oh, YouTube. YouTube has put an award into my show.
The hardest working YouTube movie review channel according to YouTube, who is fair and treat all channels the same regardless of their size. Do I seriously have to... And the nominees are Possessed by Horror. Sarah Hawkinson runs Possessed by Horror. She sits in front of her DVD collection and tells her viewers whether or not she liked the movie she's reviewing. 250,000 subscribers and 26 million channel views. Austin Burke. Austin Burke runs Austin Burke, and he sits in front of his DVD collection and tells his viewers whether or not he liked the movie he's reviewing. 144,000 subscribers, 49 million channel views. Cody Leach. Cody Leach is operated by Cody Leach. He sits in front of his DVD collection and tells his viewers whether or not he liked the movie he's reviewing. And he often seems annoyed with his viewers, even when he's in the process of answering their questions in exchange for money. 127,000 subscribers, 36 million channel views. Chris Stuckman. Chris Stuckman runs Chris Stuckman, and he sits in front of his DVD collection and tells his viewers whether or not he liked the movie he's reviewing. And he also asks his subscribers for money so he can make horror movies, and they give him millions of dollars. 2 million subscribers and 736 million channel views. Johnny recaps movies. Johnny runs his channel all by himself. He builds his own virtual 3D background so he can present his reviews from graveyards and beaches and bathtubs and spaceships and outer space and underwater and in morgues and with scary monsters, all so his audience is entertained. He uses his knowledge of movies to convey the best and worst elements of the film he's reviewing in hopes of being informative too. And if the movie he's reviewing is terrible, he makes sure he and his viewers get a good laugh out of it anyway. 1,158 subscribers, 123,000 channel views.
And the winner There's a four-way tie for first place. Congratulations to Possessed by Horror and Austin Burke and Chris Stuckman and Cody Leach. That's great. That's great. Congratulations. It says here that YouTube is going to provide each of you with a brand new DVD rack to present in front of. And 100,000 fucking... This next award shines a light on the next generation of drug-addicted horror convention regulars before they get all old and difficult to look at.
Best Young Person.
And the nominees are Anastasia Russo and Carlos Morayon as Tin and Tina in Tin and Tina, directed by Ruben Stein. Kristen Cooey as Wen in Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Peter de Souza Fahony as Henry from The Pope's Exorcist, directed by Julius Avery. Woody Norman as Peter in Cobweb, directed by Samuel Bowden.
And the winner is The Pope's Exorcist, which is not to be confused with The Pope Sexorcist. That's an entirely different film.
Say what you will about The Pope's Exorcist as a film, and I've probably said worse myself. It's unimaginative and derivative like 99% of possession movies, but this category highlights acting by a young person, and young Peter managed something very challenging for a 13-year-old kid. Post-possession, the child in him completely disappeared. That's what they paid him to do, and that's what this award is for.
If you're here watching tonight, I can assume you're either here to see Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland, or you're a fan of scary movies. And if you're a fan of scary movies, you already know Hollywood's formulaic lack of creativity is destroying our favorite little pastime. And that makes this next category very important.
Most original concept.
And the nominees are Beau is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster; Perpetrator, directed by Jennifer Reeder; Skinamarink, directed by Canada's Kyle Edward Ball; and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, directed by scam artist Reese Fake Waterfield. And the winner is Beau is Afraid. To clarify, this category is not about how well the concept was brought together or what we thought about the overall film. It's about that grain of creative originality at the heart of the story. Sincerely speaking, none of the movies in this category felt like completely cohesive films to me. Perpetrator showed a lot of promise with its lack of restraint and creative imagery, but I'm still not sure what its point was. Skinamarink was a novel concept, but I don't see it as anything further than that. I won't give Blood and Honey the satisfaction of speaking about it, but Beau is Afraid made a lot of sense to me. It is my least favorite of Ari Aster's 3 films, but I absolutely get what he's trying to convey.
Next up, a category that is very near and dear to my heart. That is why I look a little sad this year.
Best slasher movie.
And the nominees are Sick, directed by John Hyams; Scream 6, directed by Matt Olpin and Tyler Gillett; Totally Killer, directed by Nanachka Khan; and The Conference, directed by Patrick Eklund.
And the winner is Totally Killer.
It's no secret I have no interest in the Scream series after the first movie, and Sick was full of plot holes and politics and poorly executed tropes. And while I did enjoy Patrick Eklund's The Conference, it was light on the gore and even lighter on the tension, both of which are strikes against a slasher movie. As an 80s kid, Totally Killer hit the nostalgia nerve for me. Jamie, the main character, is a typical byproduct of 2023's politically correct, cowardly language and behaviors, and it was hilarious seeing her tossed into the deep end of an era I missed so much for its lack of hypersensitivity. It also had a great little mystery at the heart of the plot, and it balanced the humor with the intrigue in just the right way.
And now to shift from blood and guts to mindfucks.
Best psychological horror.
And the nominees are Clock, directed by Alexis Jacknow; Run Rabbit Run, directed by Dana Reed; Birth, Rebirth, directed by Laura Moss; and Inside, directed by Vasilis Katsoupas.
And the winner is Run Rabbit Run.
This movie did receive very mixed reviews, so I'll try and explain why I've chosen it over the others. Clock started out very strong. By the 30-minute point, I was excited I'd come across something unique. But the film loses its focus in the second half, and it felt like it was trying to explore too many themes at the same time. I loved Birth, Rebirth. It was potent and shocking at times. It was very well acted and an innovative take on the Frankenstein concept, but it fell apart in the end and left a taste of incompletion in my mouth. As much as I enjoy watching Willem Dafoe do anything, Inside felt like a one-trick pony, totally lacking horror elements. Run Rabbit Run's definitely not for everyone, but it fits perfectly into the psychological horror category. It's well acted, with particularly strong performances from both Sarah Snook and Lily Latour, who play the mother-daughter team. The story's less a plot and more a gradual immersion into Sarah's rapidly loosening grip on reality, and that gradual immersion pulls you down slowly, almost imperceptibly, until you find yourself standing next to Sarah at the end in a total state of panic delirium.
When movies in this next category are done properly, I think they are some of the best that horror has to offer.
Best found footage.
And the nominees are Horror in the High Desert 2, directed by Dutch Merrick; VHS 85, featuring segments from David Bruckner, Scott Derrickson, Gigi Saul Guerrero, Natasha Kermani, and Mike P. Nelson. The Outwaters, directed by and starring Robbie Banfitch. Missing, directed by Will Merrick and Nick Johnson.
And the winner is The Outwaters.
I'm guessing about half of you will agree with my pick, and the other half will think I don't deserve to own this channel. The consensus is, much like Kyle Edward Ball's Skinnamarink, either you connected with what Robbie Banfitch was trying to convey in The Outwaters, or you didn't. And I really, really did. When it comes to critiquing found footage films, before you even consider the plot, the perceived authenticity has to pass a sniff test. And for me, this movie did so with flying fucking colors. This movie instilled a legitimate sense of helplessness in me that I have not felt in a very long time, and a film has never been what's caused me to feel it in the past. So, well done, Robbie Banfitch.
Nuestra próxima categoría es Mejor Película Extranjera. Lo siento mucho, Chase.
Best Foreign Horror.
And the nominees are Huesera, The Bone Woman, a Mexican film directed by Michelle Carza Cervera. When Evil Lurks, an Argentinian film directed by Demian Rugna. Family Dinner, a German film directed by Peter Hengel. And El Conde, aka The Count, a Chilean black comedy horror directed by Pablo Larraín.
Y el ganador es When Evil Lurks.
Huesera, The Bone Woman's getting very high ratings, but I can't understand why. It was just okay. El Conde, or The Count, was very original and I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like a horror film to me. Family Dinner was a great mix of psychological and body horror, but When Evil Lurks is in a category all of its own. In keeping things spoiler-free, I'm going to have to leave this here, for now anyways.
This next category makes me kind of angry, because it rewards supposedly creative people for expressing themselves creatively using other people's creativity. But as horror fans, we take what we're given and we smile about it.
Best Adapted Screenplay.
And the nominees are Last Voyage of the Demeter, directed by Andre Ovredal, Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, The Boogeyman, directed by Rob Savage, and Renfield, directed by Chris McKay.
And the winner is Renfield, actually.
If you haven't heard me start a sentence like this before, you're probably new here. The first novel I ever read at the age of 7 was Bram Stoker's Dracula. I have a connection to it. That's why the announcement of The Last Voyage of the Demeter was such a bittersweet thing for me. I was excited to see a new Dracula movie announced, but anyone who knows the original story knows what happens on the Demeter. I cannot understand why they picked that chapter to expand upon. Knock at the Cabin paled in comparison to the source material, and as per usual, M. Night Shyamalan stripped away all the nuance and subtlety from the plot, completely dulling down what started out as an intriguing story. And The Boogeyman, for all its hype and potential, was dumb and obvious. That leaves us with Renfield, which surprised the hell out of me. It's fast-paced and funny, and there's a story with lessons of self-worth and the dangers of codependency and even abuse from loved ones. Shifting the focus from the Count to the familiar was a nice touch, and I had a blast watching Renfield find himself amidst all the chaos. Of all of these adaptions, Renfield transformed the source material into its own thing better than anybody else did.
Next up is something fun I used to dabble in as a kid, and it can make or break an otherwise great movie.
Best Special Effects.
And the nominees are Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin, Megan, directed by New Zealand's Gerard Johnstone, Beau is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster, Last Voyage of the Demeter, directed by Andre Ovredal.
And the winner is Evil Dead Rise.
As per my reviews of Evil Dead Rise, I was a fan of this movie immediately, but over the last 6 months, it's grown on me even more. With every rewatch, I've gained a new appreciation for the quantity and quality of the practical special effects. From the very opening scene to the dying minutes of the movie, something's dead or dying or reanimating or bleeding or leaking or puking or rolling its eyes up into the back of its head. And that is what it's all about.
This next category, unfortunately, lacked a certain depth this year, and I'm just going to leave that there.
Best Practical Creature.
And the nominees are Evil Dead Rise, visual effects by Ed Bruce. The Boogeyman, VFX designer Jonathan Peach Delorme. Unwelcome, creature design by Paul Catlin. Slaughterhouse, creature design by Mark Rappaport and Tony Carrillo.
And the winner is Unwelcome.
What did you say? What did you say?
Although the Boogeyman has a cool look about it in shots like this, most of the time you can't see it or it looks like a Disney cartoon. And although I got a good chuckle out of the sloth in Slaughterhouse, it was a tad one-dimensional. The red caps in Unwelcome looked ridiculous, and you can never quite decide if you're meant to fear them or kick them up the grass like a soccer ball. But they were all real, practical creatures, very reminiscent of so many 80s movies, and I for one appreciate the time and effort it takes to create things like this in the age of CGI.
Next up, the art of creating the film's aesthetic through the use of set pieces.
Best production design.
And the nominees are Beau is Afraid, production designer Fiona Crombie. The Last Voyage of the Demeter, production designer Edward Thomas. Evil Dead Rise, production design by Nick Bassett. The Nun 2, production design by Stéphane Cresson.
And the winner is Last Voyage of the Demeter.
The ship you see in the movie is an actual ship, and they built it from scratch and set it in a tank in Malta. The ship's 214 feet long, 35 foot wide, and it weighed over 100 tons. It looked great, and it was fully functioning. Despite my issues with the story itself, you have to respect this kind of work and attention to detail in 2023, when a keyboard warrior could have made 25 of these ships in an afternoon.
From here on in, it's all the big stuff now, folks. Each category will have 5 nominees compared to the 4 the previous categories had. And without further ado, ladies first.
Best lead actress.
And the nominees are From Black. Anna Camp plays Cora, a recovering addict presented with a supernatural means of finding out what happened to her missing son. Birth, Rebirth. Maren Ireland plays Rose, a morgue technician who breathes new life into the Dr. Frankenstein story. No One Will Save You. Caitlin Dever plays Bryn, a creative and talented young woman alienated from her community.
Alienated.
Run Rabbit Run. Sarah Snook plays Sarah, a fertility doctor who grows increasingly unsettled as her young daughter claims to have memories from another life.
And the winner is Maren Ireland, Birth, Rebirth.
Birth, Rebirth follows a frosty, extremely socially awkward coroner named Rose. Her mother's early death drove her to mad scientist status, and you will not believe the lengths she goes to in order to ensure success with her experiments. I found her disturbing and driven and terrifying and strangely sympathetic all at the same time.
Next up, The Boys.
Best lead actor.
And the nominees are Corey Hawkins as Clemens, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Clemens is an English doctor who uses his medical expertise to barter his way on board the ship. Tobin Bell, Jigsaw, Saw X. We've already established you're a horror fan if you're here, so I'm not going to bother telling you who Jigsaw is. Nicholas Hoult as Renfield in Renfield. Dracula's faithful assistant decided he's had enough of his life of servitude and is ready to try life outside the shadow of the Prince of Darkness. Alexander Skarsgård. James Foster in Infinity Pool. Whilst on holiday with his wife, James Foster ends up in the hands of the local authorities after a tragic accident.
And the winner is Alexander Skarsgård, Infinity Pool.
This movie was not all that well received critically. A lot of people felt director Brandon Cronenberg was doing an impersonation of his famous father's themes and preoccupations with body horror and sex. But none of that's got anything to do with Alexander Skarsgård, who completely lost himself in the character's hedonistic excesses in the best way possible. His character hits the extreme highs and lows of every imaginable emotion over and over while keeping it together just enough to make it to the end of the film mostly in one piece.
A perfect script with amazing actors and top-notch visuals means absolutely nothing if you don't have a capable director to manage and guide each of these elements towards their best artistic potential. Next up,
Best horror director.
And the nominees are Andre Øvredal, Last Voyage of the Demeter. Norway's own Andre Øvredal is no stranger to scary movies. He directed Troll Hunter and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and one of my favorites, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. His goal with this movie was to make Dracula's gradual reveal feel as much like an evolution of the character as it was an advancement of the plot. Demian Rugna, When Evil Lurks. When Evil Lurks is a story about two brothers who inadvertently turn a demonic infection into an epidemic. Rugna's goal was to shake up the demonic possession subgenre, and boy did he do that. Lee Cronin, Evil Dead Rise. Apparently, Lee Cronin wrote Evil Dead Rise from his bed in Dublin, Ireland during the COVID lockdown. Before Evil Dead Rise, Cronin directed 2019's The Hole in the Ground, which wasn't bad. Credit where credit's due, though. Taking on an Evil Dead movie after only doing one other horror film took some balls. Or maybe it was the fever from the coof. Chris McKay, Renfield. With his background in Lego movies and 2021's The Tomorrow War, Chris McKay seemed like a peculiar pick to direct a horror comedy about Dracula and his assistant. But he surprised a lot of people, myself included. Brian Duffield, No One Will Save You. Brian Duffield's an American filmmaker. He directed The Babysitter in 2017 and Underwater in 2020. He was fascinated by the idea of an accident destroying a young person's entire life, and he wanted to give the character an impossible happy ending. No One Will Save You is what he came up with, and I'd say he more than accomplished his goal.
And the winner is Demian Rugna, When Evil Lurks.
This category was one of the toughest. I am a fan of Andre Øvredal's movies. I just felt like The Last Voyage of the Demeter was far too limited in its scope as per the source material. I'm also a big fan of Evil Dead Rise, but it is unfortunately a newer version of an existing franchise, and that means lots of the work's done for the director before the project's even been signed off on. I loved Renfield because it was fun and fast-paced, but it won as a horror comedy, not a pure horror. I was very impressed with No One Will Save You, and I think its lack of dialogue was an impressive feat, but removing that dialogue also robs the story of some potential depth. As a fan of 2017's Terrified, I already knew Demian Rugna understood horror, but he's done something very different with When Evil Lurks. Without exaggeration, this movie contains some of the most realistic depictions of horror you've ever seen, but all the other usual suspects in terms of lighting and score and cinematography are equally well done, making this a unique and unsettling experience for even the thick-skinned among us. Throw in a compelling story and some very believable acting, and we have ourselves a fucking brilliant horror film.
Next up, sorry, what I meant was
The shocking scene.
And the nominees are Family Dinner, directed by Peter Hengel, The Secret Ingredient Scene, Talk to Me, directed by the Philippou brothers, Self-Inflicted Fun, When Evil Lurks, directed by Demian Rugna, Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin, Not Seeing Eye to Eye, The Outwaters, directed by Robbie Banfitch, A Farewell to,
And the winner is Family Dinner.
As far as I'm concerned, the scenes I've selected from each of these movies are all winners. In fact, I'd say there's probably 4 scenes in When Evil Lurks alone that could have had a shot at this title. But for whatever reason, the scene from Family Dinner hit me in a way I can still feel 2 weeks after watching it. Many of us are acquainted with the idea of overbearing mothers and strange private family routines, but Family Dinner takes it to unimaginable extremes, and the reveal in this movie was so well done, I challenge anybody to watch it and stay unaffected.
This next category pays homage to one of horror's oldest traditions.
Best Final Girl.
And the nominees are Sophie Thatcher as Sadie Harper in The Boogeyman, Caitlin Dever as Bryn Adams, No One Will Save You, Lily Sullivan as Beth, Evil Dead Rise, Allison Williams as Auntie Gemma in Megan, Natalia Solian as Valeria, Husera the Bone Woman.
And the winner is, are you kidding me? Hands down, Caitlin Devers as Bryn Adams, No One Will Save You.
As a huge fan of Alien's Ellen Ripley and the first Halloween's Laurie Strode, etc., I've always appreciated a strong female lead that isn't compelled to mention they're a strong female lead. Everyone nominated in this category was great, but Caitlin Devers' Bryn Adams takes a beating over the entire runtime that's physical and emotional and psychological, and she doesn't mention anything at all. Sarah Connor in the original Terminator had a rough time, but she was given tools like like Language and Kyle Reese. In a final girl sense, I can't say I've ever seen anything like this, and I bet it's going to be a very long time before I see anything like it again.
We are nearly there, folks. Next up.
Best horror villain.
And the nominees are Last Voyage of the Demeter, Count Dracula; Evil Dead Rise, Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie the Deadite; Family Dinner, Pia Hertziger; The Mother, The Passenger, Kyle Gallner as Benson; Infinity Pool, Mia Goth as Gabby.
And the winner is... not Kyle Gallner. I only put him in there because my friend Heidi likes him. Actually, being afraid of Kyle Gallner as a villain would be the same as being afraid of Michael Cera as a villain. But the actual winner is Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie the Deadite from Evil Dead.
That's her. That's Alyssa Sutherland. Fuck.
Taking on a lead role in an Evil Dead movie is no mean feat. The franchise has legions of devoted fans, me being several of them, and the first two movies in the series set a very challenging standard to follow. With Evil Dead Rise specifically, a lot of critics were waiting with their Kandarian daggers out to condemn the movie after Fede Alvarez's 2013 version of Evil Dead got a lot of mixed reviews, mostly because the franchise's staple manifestations of evil in the Deadites bore little to no resemblance to the ones the fans knew and loved. Then along came Lee Cronin and Alyssa Sutherland. Despite never having played this kind of character before, Alyssa made the role her own and brought a lot of the psychological aspects of the Deadites back, and it was a very welcome thing.
As a direct result of the last couple of years being completely messed up for most of us, 2023 became huge in terms of our excitement and anticipation of new movies. But with great anticipation often comes great disappointment.
Biggest fucking letdown.
And the nominees are Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. With Winnie going public domain at the start of 2022, Reese Fake Waterfield jumped on the idea of turning the beloved bear full feral, and a lot of us were excited about it. Insidious, The Red Door. After 10 years of absence, the idea of picking up the story where it left off with the original characters and Patrick Wilson in the director's chair had a hell of a lot of potential. The Exorcist, Believer. Depending on the circles you travel in, you might see The Exorcist as one of the scariest horror films ever made. It is certainly one of the most well-known. After its many terrible sequels, the announcement of a direct part 2 involving Blumhouse turned the horror world's head backwards with anticipation. Beau is Afraid. I nearly got Ari Aster's face tattooed on my forearm after seeing Hereditary, and it's a good thing I didn't after seeing Midsommar. There was a hell of a lot of talk and anticipation about his third film, Beau is Afraid. The Boogeyman. Whether it was David Dalmaskian telling everyone how creepy the movie was going to be, or the level at which boogeyman lore has permeated society, this one was meant to be something special. The original story being a mere 11 pages long, that left a lot of room for interpretation of the source material.
And the winner is The Exorcist, Believer.
I'll be addressing this film with a full spoilers review, so I will keep this brief. David Gordon Green traded Ellen Burstyn's good name for ticket sales. He made an Exorcist movie that was neither frightening nor did it contain an exorcist. He brought nothing new to the movie or the demonic possession subgenre, meaning he created nothing as a supposed creator. He has such a lack of understanding when it comes to film, he thought he could recreate the original movie's ominous, dreadful tone by replicating scenes from it. And even with the plagiarism, he still failed to make the movie scary or even mildly nostalgic. But worst of all, he knew it was going to be shit, and instead of allowing any number of other better qualified directors to do the job, he did it anyways.
Are you directing the trilogy or just directing this one?
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
And that, folks, tells you everything you need to know. Well, folks, we've only got the best and the worst left, and we are saving the best till last. If you are still here, do me a favor. Hit the like button and consider subscribing.
Hit the fucking like button, you fucking ding-dongs.
Worst horror movie.
And the nominees are Snowfalls, directed by Colton Tran; Exorcist Believer, directed by David Gordon Green; You're Killing Me, directed by Beth Hanna; Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, directed by Reese Fake Waterfield; The Nun 2, directed by Michael Chavez.
And the big friggin' loser is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
It's undeniable. There's something intriguing within the idea of transforming one of your childhood favorites into a horror movie slasher. And with so many huge characters' copyrights set to slip into public domain in the next decade or so, I'm positive somebody is going to be able to help the concept reach its full uncanny potential. But it won't be Rhys Fake Waterfield. In fact, if I find out he's attached himself to Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or Pluto, all of whom are up for grabs soon, I'll drive to the studio he's working out of and stop him myself. This movie's atrocious. The script reads like somebody wrote it during a bad acid trip. The dialogue makes you think you might be on a bad acid trip. The acting can't be referred to as acting in any traditional sense. The costumes depicting the global cultural icons are $10 rubber masks from eBay. For a slasher film, the kills are weaker than what you'd see in an episode of Home and Away, and the plot lacks cohesion so badly, it took me 4 attempts to get through the entire fucking movie. So fuck you, Rhys Waterfield, you soulless, greedy leech of a human being. Fuck you.
And tonight's final award.
Best Horror Movie.
The nominees are When Evil Lurks, Damien Rugna, Evil Dead Rise, Lee Cronin, No One Will Save You, Brian Duffield, Renfield, Chris McKay, Talk to Me, The Philippou Brothers. And the winner is When Evil Lurks. Every so often, a movie comes along that stands out and breaks through previously established limits. It shows us things we're familiar with under a very different light. Most relevant to these Scary Movie Awards, and When Evil Lurks specifically, this movie gives horror filmmakers the thumbs up to do things they hadn't considered doing before. And it gives horror fans an opportunity to realize there are places horror movies still haven't gone, and what an encouraging fucking sentiment that is. Every movie in this category is great, and I will happily rewatch all of them, but every one of them is also familiar to me. I've seen each of these movies with different names and different actors in them before. That's not a complaint. Horror has conventions, and its subgenres even more so. But this movie hit me ferociously from a brand new, unexpected angle, like somebody stabbing you in the back of the knee while you're standing in your kitchen washing dishes. And I would love to get into the meat of this movie right now, but I can't. So expect my full review coming shortly, because for me, When Evil Lurks just made up for every single piece of shit horror film to waste our time and money in 2023.
Thank you all very much for joining me tonight. Thank you as well, ladies. I had a real blast putting all this together, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. And if you did, hit the fucking like button. Happy Halloween, everybody. And until next time.